All right, today we are cracking a 2,000-year-old cold case. And I'm not kidding. Forget about dusty old scrolls. We're diving headfirst into a logic puzzle from the Talmud that honestly reads more like a detective story. It's this incredible puzzle that really challenges how we think about rules, and, believe me, it reveals a way of thinking that is just incredibly sophisticated.
So, this is the big question, right? The one at the absolute heart of our mystery. I mean, we tend to think of sacred laws as being totally absolute, set in stone. But what happens when you find an event in history that seems to just take a hammer to that stone? A case that looks like it breaks an unbreakable rule. Well, that's the exact puzzle the ancient rabbis had to figure out.
Okay, so our investigation kicks off with this one single, really peculiar event from thousands of years ago. You can think of it as the one loose thread that, when you start to pull on it, seems like it could unravel the entire fabric of the law.
And this is where the plot really thickens. You've got three super unusual things happening all at once here. First, this offering was made by individuals, the tribal princes. Second, they were offering incense. And third, and this is a big one, they did it on the external altar. Now, as you're about to see, every single one of these actions was a huge challenge to the established sacred law.
So you might be wondering, how did the Talmud itself talk about this weird event? Well, it called it a provisional edict. Think of this like a one-time-only hall pass. It's a critical clue, basically the text admitting, yeah, we know this was strange, no, you can't do it again. But the fact that this exception even exists, well, that creates a huge logical problem.
To really get just how big of a deal this was, we need to look at the actual rulebook. So let's take a step back and see what the standard operating procedure for incense was supposed to be.
It really all comes down to location, location, location. See, there wasn't just one altar, there were two, and they each had a totally different job. You had the outer altar out in the public courtyard for things like animal sacrifices. But then there was the more sacred inner altar, which was made of gold and was hidden away inside the holy sanctuary. This distinction, it's the key to this whole puzzle.
And that brings us to the rules for incense. And let me tell you, the law was crystal clear on 3 points. Number 1. Incense was for the whole community, not for individuals. 2. It was obligatory, not some voluntary gift you could bring whenever you felt like it. And 3, most importantly, it belonged only on that inner golden altar. The princes, they broke all 3 of those rules. So now we've got our central conflict, right? On one hand, you have this strange, one-time offering by the princes, and on the other, you have a set of explicit, totally absolute rules. This is where the puzzle really starts to heat up.
So, this is the logical question that just jumps right out at you. I mean, if the prince's offering was accepted, that creates a precedent, doesn't it? It kind of suggests there's a loophole. Maybe the rule wasn't so absolute after all. Let's call this Exhibit A, the precedent that suggests, maybe an individual can offer incense on the outer altar.
But then you have Exhibit B. This is a direct quote from the book of Exodus, and it's talking about the altar. And it says, "You shall bring no strange incense thereon." It doesn't say usually, it doesn't say unless you're a prince, it says no, period, full stop.
And here it is. This is the core of the dilemma for the Talmudic scholars. How in the world do you reconcile these two things? How can you have this historical event that was clearly accepted and a sacred law that seems to forbid that very same thing from ever happening? It's a genuine paradox.
And this is where our detective enters the scene. A brilliant scholar named Rav Papa comes along, and he doesn't dispute the facts. Oh no, he just looks at them from a completely different angle, and he's armed with this stunning piece of logical insight.
So Rav Papa's secret weapon is this specific form of legal reasoning called lo mibaya. It's this fantastic rhetorical structure that basically means it goes without saying, or it's not necessary to state the obvious. He uses this to build a really sophisticated not only but even argument that completely flips the whole problem on its head.
Okay, so here's how Rav Papa cracks the case. It's brilliant. He says the original ruling isn't just a simple statement, it's a clever piece of legal engineering. He argues, look, it goes without saying that a community can't offer incense on the outer altar. There's zero precedent for that. And it's just as obvious that an individual can't use the inner altar. No precedent for that either. The real reason the rule is written this way, he says, is to deal with the one confusing case we do have a record of. It's designed to teach us that even the offering of the princes, that one single instance that looks like a loophole, well, that's forbidden for the future too, because it was just a one-time special exception. And just like that, you see the solution. The apparent contradiction, it wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a paradox at all. It was actually an incredibly sophisticated and efficient way of teaching the law.
So by phrasing the law in this Smomeh Bayah style, the ancient text wasn't just stating a simple rule. It was basically playing 4D chess, proactively shutting down any possible misunderstanding before it could even start. It used the one confusing historical event as a teaching tool to make the law even more airtight. Pretty clever, huh?
So here it is, the final verdict. Every single possible scenario is now covered and clearly forbidden. The two obvious cases, forbidden, no precedent. And the one tricky case, the one that started this whole investigation, also forbidden, because its precedent was just a one-time exception. Every loophole is closed, every door is locked. Case closed.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, this ancient puzzle shows us this really profound approach to law and logic. The goal isn't just to yell out a command, don't do this. It's about building a whole system of rules that's smart, that's flexible, and that's strong enough to account for history, for exceptions, and even for human nature itself.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Rav Papa didn't actually find a new answer. He found a better, more elegant way to ask the question. It makes you wonder, how many of our own complex problems, in law, in science, even in our daily lives, could be solved if we just stopped looking for a simple yes or no and started looking for a much deeper way to frame the entire issue?